with slavery and things like that, when you're selling them, you're taking them away from their families, right? So when you grow up without family, it obviously makes you connect to something anyway, because you're holding on to whatever you have, right? And then they were kept in a place where they couldn't have anything or couldn't own anything. So all these things are conducive to helping create this type of, I just need something, right? Somewhere better to go after here. And that's really what helps you hold on to it. You know, my life kind of started off the same way, especially when how Christianity is given to you. It's given to you when you're young, you know, before you have the ability to critically think. So you have this information, and it's a little bit of information, but they first start you off with a name, you know. For me, that name was Jesus, of course, right? Didn't know anything about this Jesus. All I know is that my grandmother's telling me about it. Why my grandmother? My mother died when I was 3 years old, okay? I do not remember her. My father wasn't there. So here I am, this lonely kid, right? So when she starts telling me about Jesus, she's introducing Jesus to me by way of, he can make my life better, right? He can give me the tools I need to make it through this life. Or I'm special now. Because all these bad things happen to me, God has a calling for me, right? And then because these bad things happen, that's proof that one day God's gonna use you for something big. So all these thoughts as a child, it gives you this purpose, right? Where you normally didn't have that purpose, now you have this purpose. Almost you feel like a superhero. Like this greater energy than you is now giving you this supernatural power, and you're gonna use it to now save the world, right? You ain't even read a scripture yet. You're already pretty much engulfed in the belief. You don't have any doubt about it. I was started off, of course, with Santa Claus. Okay, so if you don't mind, I just want to tell you a little bit about how, you know, my story leading to waking up, becoming a preacher, a pastor, and things like that. But I started off like any other kid. Just I believed anything that they told me because I trusted them. Santa Claus, and I was talking to them about that a little bit earlier, is that when you get this idea of Santa Claus, what's the proof of Santa Claus? A child doesn't ask these questions, right? Because it comes with gifts. Right? Toys, right? Who's gonna turn that down, right? And it's crazy because it doesn't even make sense when you first hear it. But to a child, their view of the world is not the world to a grown man, to a grown woman, right? They view the world very small. So it's not far-fetched to think that a man can go down a chimney and give everyone a gift, right? In one night. It's not far-fetched. You believed it too? Who all believed in it? Look, y'all atheists, y'all like, I didn't believe in none of that stuff. Next, it was the tooth fairy. And I was telling them earlier that the proof of Santa Claus was presents. When I saw my presents, a couple of presents I had, it was like a pair of socks. She was very poor, right? So I got my pair of socks, and I was happy about my pair of socks, but I thought it came from Santa. When my teeth fell out, I had a dime under my pillow, right? Or a quarter under my pillow. And that was proof of the tooth fairy, right? And so when you live and you're young and you accept these beliefs without challenge, when does it stop? If you believe in that, next you get told about the tooth fairy. Now you're told about Jesus, right? And you get to watch grown-ups solidify your belief by also praying to it, by also contributing to it, taking you to church. I remember the first time my grandmother gave me $1 to put in a collection plate, and I was happy. I was happy to just go give that $1 away because I saw everybody else doing it, and they seemed to be in such joy about giving to God. And so I thought I was giving my $1 to God. These things help solidify your beliefs. And when I talk to, believers about that now, they don't want to hear that. I think they forgot how they got the belief. They all seem to think that they actually did logical thinking, research, and then found that the only thing they ever heard about was true, And so when you're asking them that, how can you come to that conclusion and you've literally never heard about anything else, right? It's, well, I was just lucky. It's just, I'm glad. And she was talking about, black Christians, so to speak. A lot of black Christians, they're actually excited about slavery. Yeah, as horrible as that sounds, they say it's good that it happened because if they didn't, we'd be over there still worshiping false gods. That's the idea, is that they were saved by way of slavery to find the right God, and they're so excited now to have it. When you're dealing with someone with that type of mindset, it is very difficult to talk with them because you see that they're in no way, shape, or form trying to let go. So the main thing is trying to, reset or redo the way you think, because religion, it is a way of thinking, okay? You introduce this faith, and now you can't examine your religion fully because you have to accept it on faith. But how can you challenge something if you've accepted it by faith? Faith is to believe something without question. to believe something without challenge. So how would I know it's false if I accept it on faith? And again, doubt is something that's it's used on you like blackmail, right? If you ask a question, you are now questioning God, and that is offensive. My grandmother, she was the type of person that she didn't mind you asking questions. So here I am thinking that I'll start asking questions about God because I'm very curious. So I started asking her a question. I'm reading through Genesis. I couldn't even get through it, and God is walking through a garden. Well, the attributes to God, right, this biblical character, is that he's everywhere, right? Absolutely everywhere. So my question was, how can you walk if you're everywhere? You're already there. It doesn't make sense. And this is a child, I'm asking this question. If I'm already in Tibet, why I got to catch a plane? It just sounds ridiculous, right? And she smacked me so hard, right, that my ear was literally ringing, okay? And she didn't have to say don't question God. I knew at that moment, you don't ask those type of questions. But I guess inside of me, I just knew that, don't ever ask that again. And because of that, I said I have to figure out a way to stop asking these questions, because when you ask Sunday school teachers or anything, it's you have a lack of faith. You need to work on your faith. It's your fault. It's always your fault. Okay? It's not that the literature doesn't make sense. It's literally your fault. So when you hear a story about two animals, right? Two of each animal walking to an ark, all the way from where, right? Penguins, polar bears. These things, what's those little worms that turn into balls that live underground? So they went all the way to Africa and got on a boat, right? There are 40,000 different species of spiders. How would Noah know when to stop looking? How does he know you have enough? These type of things as a child boggle your brain because you're trying to figure out how in the world could this possibly happen. But again, you cast these thoughts down in the name of Jesus because this is what you're taught. So the goal is that you do not think, right? But the problem with doubt is that it's inevitable. You're going to doubt, period. Doubt is actually a good tool. Without doubt, you believe any lie told to you. If I walked up to you and said, drink this, right, it's going to make you live forever. Would you drink it? No, because you're an atheist? No, I'm kidding. But you're using logic. You don't know me. You don't know what's in there, right? It'd be silly to just take somebody at their word and start drinking. But that's what we do with religion. We don't do it with a stranger. We do it with someone we love. See, the whole thing about religion is it's set up that way. They know what they're doing. Get you when you're young, right, by someone who loves you dearly. Why would they lie to you? In fact, they even believe it. There's no reason why you walk away from this thing not believing in it. So now when I talk to Christians, and now here I am, this guy who doesn't believe anymore, they ask me, how did you come to this conclusion? So here we go. Going to church at a young age. Of course, my mother died when I was 3 again, and so I lived with my grandmother until, and I wasn't actually a church goer, as much as you may think. She didn't even go that often. When she went, however, she took me. I went to summer school. It was about a week long every summer. But other than that, it was just, she was a prayed around the house all the time, always anointing somebody's head with some oil or something. She was just really into that, but she didn't really go to church. I didn't start going to church until I actually lost my grandmother. Now, just to add some preface, when I was born, my mother's parents were already dead, so I don't even know them, okay? So my father's father wasn't there for him, so I don't know him or him really, so all I had was my grandmother. So she died when I'm 15. Don't really have anywhere to go, you see. So there's this church right across the street that I would go to, just me, right? No family with me. And I'd listen to this man preach every single Sunday. And this guy, man, he became like my father. He's probably one of the nicest guys that I ever met, still to this day, okay? And I say still to this day, but he passed away as well. And this is what started me started really, reading into religion and trying to study why I believe what I believed. Of course, I always went to him for information when I needed it, and he would give me these answers. He would tell me to stay away from Bible school, stay away from this movie and that movie, that they were demonic, right? That somehow I would be demonized or get possessed by a demon if I watched these things. So I stayed away from him like he asked. But when he died, I had nobody else to call on for help. So I had to start reading and researching for myself now, right? So by this time, I'm already a youth pastor, and I'm preaching every single Sunday. And I start noticing first, number one, that the literature in the Bible specifically speaks against things like Easter and Christmas. And we're celebrating that stuff, right? So I start telling my church that this is wrong biblically. Literature-wise, this is wrong. And they told me that they were aware of that. And it blew my mind because you're talking about since 15 years old, I looked up to these people thinking that they were better Christians than me. I aspired to be like these people, only to find out that they see literature that they don't even care about living by. It blew my mind because if you really believe in it, wouldn't you be doing it? Seems that way. But when they didn't do it, of course, it upset me. And however, I stopped celebrating, but they didn't listen. You know, they didn't do it. So as the time went on, I eventually learned that tithing wasn't biblical. So I'm looking at religion, my religion, and I'm looking at the literature, not actually challenging the literature, but the people who practice it. It just didn't add up the way they were living until I continued to dig. And then I found information that showed me that this Bible was not as holy and perfect as I thought it was. Okay, so I started looking at the origins of these books and things, really trying to prove them to be real. And obviously it didn't work out that way for me. It went from being judgmental to, you know, let everybody have whatever they want because we all can't prove it anyway. That was my way of holding on to my belief. So now that I'm now disturbed in my belief and I don't feel 100% certain about it, I'm no longer willing to judge anybody else. So that was my first stance, right? I'm just gonna leave everybody alone, leave me alone. But that didn't last long either, right? So now I'm actually starting to teach people or tell people that the literature is not real, but I didn't know how to say it to people. So I would ask a lot of what if questions, okay? So I asked a question on my Facebook one day. It was simply, what if the Bible is not the word of God? I had been listening to a speaker who in my mind was just renowned. He went through college, Bible college. He's a doctor, 30 years in school, and now he's awake. You know, he don't believe in this stuff anymore. And that was a question that he posed whenever he was speaking. So I asked that question, you know, and so many people just got so upset with me, telling me, I thought you was this. I saw you in church preaching and praying. You do all this stuff. And that's when I made that video. Okay, so my stuff was on private, and I made this video simply to announce to a few people that I'm not going to keep on acting like I believe in this stuff. Okay, like at some point, I got to be free. I cannot live in y'all mental prison simply because y'all want me to believe something that I believed when I was younger. I used to believe in it. I know. I was there too. I remember me preaching. But for them, how can you change your mind? You know, so when I asked them these questions, you know, like, for instance, I said doubt is inevitable. Here's what the Quran says about doubt. Well, Muslims say that doubt is a disease of the heart. The Quran, in the Surah 49 and 15, it says, only those that believe in Allah and his messenger have never doubted since. So this is what the Muslims are saying to their people. Now here's what Christians say. Doubt is a tool used by Satan. They cite passages such as James 1, 6 through 8, saying that those who doubt are like a wave, right? Or a sea, tossing to and fro. This is what they say to make you feel like you would just be forever confused. It said these people who think like this should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. So imagine hearing this as a child. If you're wavering in your faith or in your doubt, you can't even expect to get a gift from God, anything. So if your life isn't lining up or you're not getting gifts, right, or you're going through trying times, you're going to question what you've been doing, right? Am I doubting? Why is God not blessing me? And what happens is you begin to associate your experience with fact. You see, if I pray for a job and now I get the job, Jesus must be real because I prayed and I got the job. But Muslims pray too, right? There's 4,200 religions on the planet. You know, all of them pray. They all believe in stuff, and they all believe in it, right? If there wasn't substantial, enough personal evidence for them that they call substantial evidence, they wouldn't believe it. So if you're using these things that, like, you know, I got a check in the mail, you know, these things are not going to prove your God to be real. And these are some of the things that I ask people because that's what held me into religion. You know, so I have here, I say, some non-believers even say that they're free to think. However, when you question them, they get angry. So I was telling him that I asked a Christian, you know, how sure was he on his belief on a scale from 0 to 100, right? And he said definitely 100, no doubt about it. Or the question was asked, can you explain why it's on 100? Why is it 100? And he said, I have many experiences, many, right? He said, can you name one? One experience? No. Wait, you consider yourself competent, right? You consider yourself an intelligent individual. If you have saw an experience and it made you believe in it, why wouldn't you then share it with us? Maybe we can believe in it too. And he gets angry because he knows he doesn't have anything. But that's what people do. You know, it's like they know they don't have anything solid, so they just say, well, trust me, I know it's real. It's just in me. I just know. But how do you know? How do you know that's not the devil talking to you? So I like to ask these kind of questions just so I can ask them to think, because you've literally read off literature this entire time and you haven't actually pressed it. You haven't challenged it. So I put here the limits imposed on your freedom. They become very apparent when you're trying to tell your family members that you don't want to subscribe to those beliefs anymore. She said it perfectly that, you know, especially for black people, when you're dealing with a world that is not fair to you and it's pretty obvious, you don't want to come out about religion, especially if you live where I live. I live in the Bible Belt. And since I've came out about religion, my life has just gotten much worse, okay? So I got fired the day after I did the video, okay? They just called me in the office and just said, you're suspended until further notice. A week later, I got a letter in the mail saying that we're using our at-will right to terminate you. Didn't even say why, you know? So you can see what type of, what it's like, and just if you just change demographic, where you got people who just really strongly believe in it. Most of the time I'm out, I worry a little bit because I get a lot of death threats. And it's funny because people treat you this way just over a belief, you know? So I wanted to say here that when it comes to these beliefs, and I asked them, you haven't had anything serious to happen to you to be able to say, I commit to this belief, then how then could you commit to it? Why can't we ask God to just speak up so everyone could hear it, right? But God don't work that way. You start to find out that God doesn't do anything practical, right? You can part a Red Sea, but you can't talk. It's like at some point we hear these stories and they just seem so amazing. And then when you look in reality, you're looking around and you're like, where is this guy? He's obviously not in this reality. Now, when you look at the term gods, you talk about Roman gods, you talk about Greek gods. Gods, emphasis on the word. That's the way people look at Yahweh or Allah or Krishna now is the same way people looked at those gods. That's why they're called gods. It's not like superheroes, okay? So when people think back and they learn Greek gods in school, they think, oh, that's just something that people made up. No, people really once prayed to Zeus, man, like really, you know? So I'm hoping at some point, we can put this like that, okay? Because the belief system that people have to put on in order to be able to believe in this stuff, it weakens them, okay? So they're not able to even take responsibility for their life. There could be something as simple as something you can handle yourself, but what will you do? You're gonna pray for it and ask somebody outside of you to do it, and you're not gonna handle it yourself. Especially things when it comes to internal things, right? You know how I get when I'm hungry? I'm praying about it. No, work on your attitude. You have a problem, right? Maybe look inside of yourself and say, I can be better. That's what other people do that don't even subscribe to religion, and it works. But you can't have morale without God. Oh, okay, you mean the same God that promised to make you eat your children? You can't have morale without that guy? Is that what you mean? Because when you look at this literature, and you're talking about a God who's supposed to be all-loving, saying that there were two brothers, right, named Onan and one named and Onan was wicked. The Bible don't even say why, it just says he was wicked. God didn't like him because he was wicked, so he killed him. Makes sense, right? If he's wicked, you got to kill him. There's obviously no better way. God is the most intelligent being in the world, and he couldn't think of a better one, so who are you to complain, right? I'm joking. Everybody's looking at me like, dang, I think he still believes. So anyway, God thinks this brother, Onan, is wicked, right? So he kills him. Now, what he needs to do, though, is make sure that Onan's wife still has a baby. So he tells his brother, to go get her pregnant, right? This is the rules, right? If a man died before he got his wife pregnant, the brother is to get her pregnant. Now, here's what Christians say. They say, that's Old Testament. You don't understand, man. At that time, that's just how it was. So you mean to tell me at one time, Yahweh, that's the only way he knew of to create a child was to force a brother to sleep with a widow, right? And then when he had sex with her, he ended up pulling out and God killed him. So you see these stories. How is that? That's not moral. He killed one brother, told the other brother to sleep with that brother's widow. He did. And when he pulled out, he killed him. The crazy thing about that story is God is attributed for knowing everything before it happens. So before God ever killed Onan, he knew would sleep with her, pull out, and he'd have to kill him, but he let him do it anyway. And these type of things I ask Christians because I want them to understand. If you really believe in this stuff, you have to understand that this God knows everything. So everything that he does is intentional. If you know everything, why would you ever plan? There would never be a need to plan. Planning is for people who don't know everything. Planning is for people who forget, right? So God's got a plan. Really? When did he take the time to do that? Because you cannot have a plan if you know everything. And for Christians, a lot of times, we can't let this stuff go. Even though you're making sense, I cannot let it go. She gave you a couple of reasons why a lot of black people are so religious. I'll give you a couple of more. Black people, and let me just make myself clear. I believe in humans. I don't believe in black and white. I know that's something that we call ourselves by or describe ourselves by. Okay, so we just got a little bit amounts of different melanin in our skin, right? We're all human. But when you're talking about people who go by the description of being black, okay, Christianity has given them their heritage. So you're talking about a culture of people who don't know their ancestors. They don't know their grandparents, great-grands, things like that. But what does religion tell them? Religion tells them that they're special, that they're God's chosen people, taken from a certain place in Africa and brought in boats to America. That's what their literature tells them. So when you tell them that none of this stuff is real, they don't know what to do with that. So who am I? So when you're looking at a person and you're saying, man, why you can't let go of this belief? They really, at that moment, they cannot, because they have nothing else to fall back to or fall back on. I put here, when it comes to these religions, you have Abraham, who was so iconic. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are collected under his name. And he is quoted for saying in the Quran, now this is talking about doubt. He is quoted in the Quran asking Allah how he plans to raise the dead. Allah said back to him, you have no faith. He just asked the question. That's it. But you have no faith. In real life, if someone asks you a question, is that lack of faith? If I say, what's your name? Well, you're going to say, you have no faith. No, it's silly, right? How do I have a lack of faith because I desire to know more? That means I'm looking for more reasons, right, to be able to accept this thing. Anyway, we're told not to ask God questions, but obviously it's incorrect because here Allah said, oh, you just want to know more. Well, in that case, watch what he says here. In that case, take 4 birds, chop them up into pieces, spread them all over a mountain, and I want you to call them back, and they'll come back quick and swift, and then you will know I'm wise. How about feed all the starving people in the world? When you talk about this literature, and you look at the Jesus figure, what did the Jesus figure do? He fed a few people, right? He walked on some water, but he never attacked slavery. He never fixed that problem. He never even spoke to it as being negative, not once, right? He also never touched world hunger. He can walk on water. I probably wouldn't have done that if I were Jesus. I would see that I'm needed somewhere else more so than here walking on H2O, right? You got a few men standing around and you rather do magic tricks, right, than feed people who are literally dying of hunger. What happens with that is now you have several people in this world who are also aware that people are dying of hunger in the world, but they go to church and give their money to a preacher man under the belief that the Bible tells them to give that or they will be cursed. It doesn't even say it in the Bible. They just believe it because they were told that. And when we try to tell them that it's not true, they get mad at us. Now, if you just listen and look at the literature, you can save money. I have family members, and I don't know about you guys, or you guys, if you have family members who subscribe to Christianity or religion, but I have family members who could have owned land and houses and all that stuff by now, and they don't, because they gave all their money to the church and didn't get anything back except for preached to. You see what I'm saying? Nothing that would really help them in their life. Instead of becoming better people, they stand and judge. They would rather tell someone that they're going to hell because they like the same sex. When it's funny because when you talk about same sex, it's no intrinsic harm to another individual. It's strictly consensual, right? But they'd rather talk about that than real problems in the world, simply because the Bible's literature says it's an abomination. And this is the stuff that we do because we're so religious. We cannot get along. So this very literature that's supposed to bring us together is actually separating us, you know. Let's see here. Abraham, now in the Bible, there's a man in the Bible who asked God for proof of himself. And he says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this fleece on the grass, okay? And when I come out in the morning, if there's dew on the fleece and not on the ground, I'm going to believe in you, right? The Bible says he did it, and he came out the next morning, and it was so. It was dew on the fleece and nowhere on the grass. And the man says, okay, I want to ask you one more thing. Like, don't be mad. But I just really need to know. So I'm going to put the fleece back out there. And tomorrow, instead of the dew being on the fleece and not on the grass, do it the other way around. And the Bible said it's so. It happened. But when you ask questions, or when Christians ask questions about this literature, you're told that you can't ask. Why do you think that is? Because you would know that the one being in the world who supposedly had all the answers probably wouldn't take an offense to you asking him a question, right? You got all the answers, but you don't like being questioned. Maybe the problem is the people that you're talking to don't like being questioned. They don't like having their faith challenged. Even as a child can ask an adult questions about their religion that will boggle their brain, because in a nutshell, that adult still has childlike thinking when it comes to religion. And the child is not yet fully under. I wasn't. When I used to ask those questions, like I said, I used to get punished, but I got better at it. I found a way how not to ask those questions, not even inside of my head. I completely tuned it out. And when I would hear other children, asking these questions, I would look at them and think about how much of a nuisance I must have been. I must have been a nuisance, asking all those questions, because now I have faith. They should aspire to have faith like me, and this is really silly, but it's like the less questions you ask, the better you are as an individual. In this literature, you have a man named Thomas who is looking at Jesus in front of his eyes, supposedly, right? Per the literature, and he doesn't believe it's Jesus, so he wants to put his finger into the hole of Jesus to make sure, man, is this really you? That's logical to me. I want to make sure there's not somebody dressed like you, But what he did, and once he did it, the Bible says that Jesus says, you did it, and that's cool, but the ones who believe me and didn't have to ask, they are really blessed. They are more blessed because they didn't have to ask. So obviously, faith is really pushed. It's really pushed. And so when I get this question from Christians saying, can you prove that Jesus isn't real? Well, can you prove anything isn't real? So I asked them a question. What if I told you that there were aliens 500 miles below the surface of Saturn that talked to me via telepathy? How could you prove me wrong? They're like, no, you can't do that. No. If you can't prove me wrong, then you have to believe it then. Prove to me that we're not in a dream of an alien that sleeps for decades. Because you can't prove something or disprove something doesn't mean you have to take the first accusation as fact and run with it. You see, but that's what we have done by religion. So when you're trying to talk people out of their religion, it's impossible, almost impossible for them to let go and change their mind without actually seeing enough of something so they can know for sure they can walk away from their belief and not go to hell, right? Walk away from their belief and not miss out on heaven. Not walk away from the belief and not miss out on their next blessing, because it's more than heaven and hell. It's like you think, these people think that they wake up because of Jesus. Jesus wakes them up in the morning. So when you have all these ideas coming into one, they become almost impossible to talk to in terms of that. So for me, my life has totally changed because I haven't given up on them. I felt like I've given so much time teaching people the incorrect way. How dare me walk away from it like it never happened, I was going to Cuba, giving away food and clothes and teaching them God, teaching them the Bible. And that's things I feel horrible about. These things haunt me every day, So people say, Kevin, why do you go so hard at religion? It seems like that's all you talk about, because there's so many people that's still religious, and there's so many people who need to move past religion so we can move forward and be better people. It's a big world out here, and we cannot make it better if people are thinking that a way to fix it is praying to someone outside of themselves, because we've known that people have been praying for years and this stuff has not fixed it, So my whole thing is, when you have someone who ties themselves to a belief that they say is holy and unique, right? But at the same time, they exercise hate and don't even realize they're doing it. I was talking to them about moral. They say, well, how can you live without God's morals? Well, explain to me, God's morals. Did you guys know that what you see all around the world as the Ten Commandments, what you've always heard as the Ten Commandments, are not the Ten Commandments? You hear, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, right? Thou shalt not commit adultery. None of those are in the Ten Commandments. The actual 10 Commandments are things like don't boil a goat in its mother's milk. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not making this stuff up. Like, that's a 10 Commandment. He didn't put anything about rape in there, nothing, just that's it. The funny thing is, or the sad thing is when you talk to women about the beliefs, about the Bible, and they hold to it, even when you show them the things that the Bible says about them, right? How the Bible looks at them. Did you guys know that in the literature, if a man rapes a woman who is unmarried, he has to pay for her. He has to buy her for 50 shekels, and she has to remain married to him for the rest of her life. Women, how would you feel if we lived in a world like that? You do realize that's supposed to be to keep you from getting raped, right? Well, here's why. Because women, if you weren't married, you were free game. This is why stories like Esther and Ruth, their whole goal is to get married so they can be protected. The Bible uses those words. Women were property, considered property by Yahweh, by the biblical God. And this literature is still adopted. And so that's why I tell people, you have to think. You think a God said this, but isn't it more likely that men did this? No. If men have sex, they won't get stoned. If women have sex, they will. You don't think that men wrote this? Right? It's obvious. If you can take a woman to be yours just simply by raping her, isn't that pretty jacked up? But it also says that if she's engaged to be married and you rape her, then you should be stoned. But if she's not engaged, then you got to buy her. Now, the reason you should be stoned if she was engaged is because you took another man's property. No lie. Now, the literature, I'm talking, you still have Christian women who tell their husbands to be faithful to them in terms of don't sleep with another woman. And I have to show them, not for the sake of so their man can have other women, but I want them to understand that the literature in the Bible actually says that's okay. It never condemns a man for having another woman. David took Bathsheba, and the only reason God had a problem with it was because she had a husband that David killed, you see. So taking another woman was never a problem. And this is literature that we look to and say some great, almighty, powerful God gave it to us. No, they didn't. And frankly, it's not that at all. It's literature that we need to scrap and do away with. If you're going to look at certain scriptures and things like that, or information and learn from it and things like that in terms of allegory and like reading any other story, then that's fine. But if you're going to believe that stuff is literal, it's going to destroy you and your brain. That's what religion does. Religion comes from a word called religare. Okay, it's a Latin word. It literally means to bind or to tie up. So he said it with me. So we know what religion is done for. So if I can give you religion, I can hold your mind back. So how can we move forward with religion? It's impossible. You're going to keep going through the same steps. And so when you're looking at black people and you're saying that, you got this religion, but you do realize that the battle you were in was with other Christians. Like your slave master was a Christian. While he was beating you on your back, he was praying to God, praying that you would be a better slave so he didn't have to hit you so many times. Whenever a slave ran away and the master was chasing after him, he was praying, hoping he could catch that slave. So I try to ask them these questions. Who did God love the most? Who did he listen to? Obviously, this being doesn't exist. But if you believe in him, you really need to start checking your beliefs, right? Now, here's one of the things. Now, one of the biggest and the hardest problems with waking up, for black people specifically, is sometimes you have to use that type of information to wake them up. Do you agree? It's very difficult to just use the plagiarized gods and things like that came before this literature to wake them up. You have to literally show them how their ancestors received this literature. When this happens, a lot of them can wake up from it, but they are angry, right? So a lot of them, if you asking, how can we get more, people of color in here? A lot of those people are like, I ain't got nothing to do with white people right now. And it's just a journey, right? It's just a fear. It's because they realize, man, I've been believing and praying to this stuff for so long, and now that lack of trust sets in, like, man, you can't trust them. And that's just a journey. It's a part of a journey. So I want you guys to understand, when you see black people wake up and they go through that journey, don't find any offense in it, because what they're doing is they're looking at history and they're just upset about history. The next step, though, is understanding that history has nothing to do literally with your present and moving forward. We get it happen, but learn now, where you are right now, how can we make the world a better place? That's the goal. Because when you got one person waking up from religion, they're saying, well, we were actually here first, right? And then you have white people saying, well, we're here first. Man, it's planet Earth. It's planet Earth, right? So now, not just religion, life is a religion. The world will try to trick you into looking at life like a religion. So I tell people now, you do realize that the earth doesn't have lines on it, right? like Mexico is not a real place. We just call that place of land Mexico so we can find it, right? So we can't assume that Mexicans are rapists. That's stupid, right? Just because they live on a certain place of the planet, they're rapists. We really believe that, right? And so we know that there are no lines on a map if you zoom out. So why is our reality still the way it is? You see? So a lot of people who don't even, subscribe to religion are religious. Religare. If a person is racist, they are religious. Think about it. What does racism teach? That you are superior, someone else is inferior. If you believe that, you haven't done your research, and you believe it, that makes you religious. It's religare, the same thing. So if you were to go to a person who's been raised their whole life to be racist, they were told that they were genetically better, right, than another race. When you go to them with information, substantial evidence proving that they are not, they will get mad at you the same way, as a religious person would for believing in Christianity. When you have a certain type of identity, it is very hard to lose it, okay? So the problem with Christianity is their identity is Christian. You don't subscribe to Christian beliefs. You are a Christian. You are that. And you don't want to lose that, because if you lose that, what do you have? Let me see. Let me make sure I wasn't going too long. I can get carried away. So I was going to say that what a lot of family members will do to you, to anybody who's considering waking up or coming out of this religion, is they will use emotional blackmail. And that's the one thing we have to understand, that we can't let that stop us, So, and obviously I'm talking to people who are listening and watching as well, because there are so many people that email me on a daily. I'm talking about, I get thousands of messages a day. How do I tell my parents? They treat it like, well, I guess they treat it like not believing in Jesus no more, right? Like, that's about the worst thing your mother can hear. She'd rather you be a drug dealer than be an apostate, right? and that's something that you raised your whole life being afraid of that word. That's what they say at me. They yell, "You were an apostate." I say, have you looked up the word apostate? It just means change your mind. It's not a negative thing at all. I'm glad to be that. I'm glad that I changed the way my mind worked, right? That way I don't have to believe in this stuff anymore. I can move forward with my life. So I guess now I try to tell people who are obviously submitting to religion that you don't have to not be called anymore, right? When you are in religion, you believe you've been called, chosen, that you have a purpose. If you lose that, now what do I do? And this is what a lot of religious people do. I do this, I do that. Like, what use will I be now? You can still do those things. This man is out here changing schools, right, and changing curriculums because he cares enough to change it. Why do you have to be religious to be called to do something greater than yourself, to do something greater for other people? You do not have to be. So you can walk away from religion and still do the same things you're doing, helping people, feeding people, making the world a better place. But most people, they step away from religion and feel like, you know what, I ain't got to help nobody no more, because it shows you why they were helping people to begin with. They thought a God was up in the air, smiling at them, saying, "Good job, buddy." If that's the only thing that makes you a good person, you really need to ask yourself some serious questions, right? I'm only good because I feel like I'm being watched. That's kind of silly. You're not good then, right? I would venture to say. To the people that you're nice to, that seems pretty good, right? If I'm starving, I don't care if you record yourself giving me $5. That's pretty cool. I get to eat anyway. But to the person that's doing it, what's driving them is being seen doing it, right? I say that whatever drives you, okay, as long as it means getting somebody fed, but understand, you don't have to need that camera in front of you and everybody else to see you, right? For you to feed people. So that's what I try to tell people. Don't have to be like that. You can still just really genuinely love people in the world. You can still have all those things. It's like people think that they were only good people because they believe in the literature, So when they step away from it, it's just so hard for them to get their feet from under themselves, and also dealing with family members as well. So you're talking about your family that you knew and loved don't want to be around you anymore because they think that if they're around you, they're going to catch a demon, right? They think it's contagious. And these churches will preach about you and tell them to stay away from you, okay? So there were people who were going live from their churches right after my video went viral, where preachers were preaching to just not follow me, just block him. Why would a person tell you that unless they knew that somebody else had information that could probably change the way you're thinking, right? But they make it seem like I'm just protecting you. Block them. So you have people who are literally trying to keep people into the belief as well. And when it comes to trying to help people, when you look at the way religious people do things, especially with church, they manipulate people. So that's what I'm trying to do now, is destroy that. The black church alone collects about $2 million every single week. Every single week. If this money was used correctly, you wouldn't have these problems that you have in the black community, right? You would have more businesses owned by black people and things like that. You wouldn't have a problem. You have grocery stores and everything. And what are the churches doing with that money? It's amazing to me that when you go under a title of being called and being anointed, you get to get away with crap, right? It's almost like you got a touch of magic. If you're a deacon, a pastor, anything like that, you can do stuff and get away with it. These men rape children and still get to preach, you see, and it's because of the belief. People think that, okay, that's just a mistake. He'll be better, right? Because all the men in the Bible had issues, so what makes him any different, right? God can still use him. That's the crap they say. You raping people, you need to be in jail. I don't care who you pray to. But it's different if it's religion. Why? You see? And it's crazy because the people inside the religion will even accept it. It's not the people that's high up that's accepting it. And I'm going to tell you why. Here's why religion is the way it is. The literature does it. Jesus, what did he do? He went and got disciples, did he not? He got 12 disciples to be exact. And he also told them that whoever doesn't listen to you, they also reject me. And if they reject me, they reject the Father as well. So this is what they use on you. I am the elite now. I am now the elect of God. I'm playing that role. So all y'all sit here and listen to me talk, and y'all can't ask me questions, right? Y'all can't pray. Let me pray for you. And this is what these people do. Even in their mind, if they feel like they're not manipulating people, the result is the same. They have you read a scripture for you, right? And they try to make it sound real good. And they literally don't give you any information surrounding that scripture or read it within context. Most people have been going to church for 20, 30 years, and I can quote a scripture out of it, and they had never heard it before. You know, they'll be looking at me like you guys were looking at me when the man, was killed for pulling out on the widow. You know, it's crazy and it's horrible information. It's almost disgusting to even say it in front of people, and it's in the Bible. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I say, we all got to come to a place in our life where we challenge these beliefs in terms of religious people, in terms of people who suffer from the belief of racism or any other type of religion that's holding you back. So these things absolutely do happen. They're taught to us at young ages before you even have the ability to deflect, right? So what I try to tell people is that because I'm attacked, they say, Kevin, well, how do you deal with it? How do you not get angry? I look at people like robots. I simply look at them and say, they have no control over how they're responding, period. One of the first words I got passed, now mind you, none of this stuff happened until I came away from religion. I started being a better person overall after I came away from religion. This N-word, right? Obviously, if a black person hears this, they're ready to fight, right? Because you're supposed to be, right? You're taught to be angry at that word. You should be mad when you hear that. So I asked myself one day, why do I have to let that word bother me, right? I understand that I've been told how to experience that word, but I think I can outgrow that, along with any insult. I think I can put that stuff so far behind me that it won't bother me, and I literally did. So I can have people that sit there and literally cuss me out, threaten to kill me, call me all kind of names, and it doesn't bother me because I know where it's coming from. What are they mad about? I didn't say anything wrong to them. All I did was say Jesus didn't exist. We obviously know what they're angry about. They're a robot. They have been trained to be angry when somebody says that. I was going to say that I hate grapefruit, okay? It's pretty random. Yeah. Who hates grapefruit? Y'all, everybody? Okay. So who likes grapefruit? I'm going to tell you what. When they were hunters and gatherers back in the day, y'all better be glad I didn't find grapefruit first. I would have said it was poisonous and told nobody to eat it. But my grandmother, she used to love grapefruit. She'd cut the whole thing in half and just eat out of it like a bowl, right? And see, I see your face, right? Tastes like pennies or something. It's disgusting. But my grandmother let me taste it one time, and grapefruit looks good. Don't get me wrong, it's like a big old orange. She gave me that grapefruit, and it was the worst thing I ever had in my life, And it hit me the other day that, what if grapefruit had absolutely no taste at all? What if grapefruit is just how I experienced it, right? Because why can my grandmother love it and I hate it? Grapefruit is literally has no taste. It's how your body experiences it, such as a lot of these words people use. You've been taught to receive a word a certain way. Look at cultures of people who eat some of the most disgusting foods. The reason they eat that crap is because they grew up eating it. My grandmother used to cook chitlins, right? Chitterlings is what you call it. You guys know what chitterlings is? So they just said, ew, okay. Man, when my grandmother would put them chitterlings on my plate, I would go to town. Oh my God. And I felt like She would never give anybody enough of chitlins because she liked them a lot. So she wouldn't put enough on your plate, and I'm always mad. Hand me some chitlins now. See what I do. I would smack the things out your hand so fast. I'm vegan. But see, at that moment in my life, I had no understanding of food. I had no idea that pork was bad for you, any of these things, right? So I'm just gobbling up. I took no thought for it. Same as religion. And now since I've learned better, I do better. The reason people take religion is because they don't know any better. Someone said that, religion is like explaining color to a colorblind person, right? So you have a problem is the reason you can't experience color. This is what they said. So my response to that was, if you take a crayon box and you hold up all the colors in the room right now is to hold them up, you guys will be able to pick the colors out, right? And you will be able to associate those colors, and probably you pick the same color yellow, right? You probably all pick yellow for yellow, right? If you had a piece of paper and I said just write down, which color is first. If yellow is first, you probably would put yellow first unanimously, right? That would mean that it's safe to say that we all are in agreement with this color yellow, right? But when you talk about religion, it's like explaining religion to a colorblind person. That's not right, because the problem with religion is yellow ain't yellow. Yellow is Presbyterian, it's Baptist, it's Methodist, it's evangelical, it's all this. And now blue is Muslim, right? Green is Judaism, Hasidic Judaism. It's all these different things. How can you come up with something that's clear if everybody arguing over it? You see, so religion is not that easy to explain, especially when you have over 30,000 different sects just in Christianity. So people say to me, Kevin, what if you're wrong? What if you die and God and Jesus really exist and you go to hell? I always lead with, well, there's 4,200 religions. What if you're wrong? Most of which of these religions have a hell to send you to. So what if you're wrong? You haven't took the research, haven't did the time to study your own belief, right? And yet you stand firmly on your belief without challenging another. You say the Quran is wrong. Have you read the Quran? Well, no. So how can you say it's wrong? They're telling me that I'm saying the Bible is wrong because I'm misinterpreting it. Doubt always gets pushed on the person. It's never you found information. It's never you did research. It's never that. You mad at God, right? Something bad happened to you. You wasn't taught it right, right? You just went to one of them horrible churches. That's what happened. Then God knew I would go to a horrible church and not believe in him, and he let me go anyway. The problem still falls back on him then, right? And I always try to give it to people like that because I want them to understand that if they're going to make it my fault, I'm putting it right back on their God. You're talking about an all-knowing God who obviously knew exactly what it would take to convince me that he exists. Instead, does not do that thing, but would judge me and send me to forever eternity in hell, burning, for not believing in it. We got to grow up. And this is what I tell people, because we have to at some point look at the information and stop asking the weird questions to try to hold on to it. My last thing, and I'll take some questions from you guys. People say, when I tell them, and I share this with them eating, that when you don't believe in the literature anymore, they say, well, then where do we come from? And this right here just speaks to the fact that they hold to the belief because they feel it gives them their past and it gives them a future. So if you believe in the literature in the Bible, you know where you came from. God created you from a piece of clay and breathed in you, right? If you're a woman, you know where you came from. God put Adam to Eve and pulled you out of a rib. If you're a woman, you even know why you get periods, right? Oh, y'all don't know? Eve ate the fruit and was given periods because she ate fruit. Like literally. The problem is every female mammal have periods, not just women. But we're going to keep believing that that's true because we want to, right? So, but when you take this religion away, they say, but where do we come from? And my whole thing to them is because if anybody if anybody can tell you exactly where we come from or try to, they're obviously lying to you, right? And the fact that I can't tell you exactly where we came from, that doesn't mean that you still should keep believing that a virgin had a baby, you know? So you can't get one from the other. I don't know where I came from, so I'm going to believe that the whole world flooded. Well, at some point use logic. And that's why I guess I'm very excited to be speaking to a bunch of free thinkers, because I honestly feel like I'm at home, because you have to use your mind. You have to use logic. If you don't use logic, you are lost, right? And critical thinking is one of the things that has not been given to a lot of religious people. They don't use it. We could be better off if we would just critically think. But because we don't, we run rampant at every sign of chaos, right? I don't know if you saw this video, someone's going live saying that America's gonna launch an EMP, right? And it's gonna shut everything down for 4 days. Okay, I get that. 4 days though. You got Big Brother, they're gonna lose that for 4 days? Okay, the whole power is gonna be off for 4 days. What about meat? You're gonna put it up, it's just gonna spoil, so what can you really do? Nobody's been told about this. You can still book an airplane. It seems like if we're gonna be believing in this stuff, we need more proof. We need to go to the government and find out. But instead, people are right now shopping at Walmart and buying up a bunch of water and things like that. And what I'm saying is a lot of times people launch these things just to get you to buy products. This is a scare tactic. The government has been using these things forever, but we don't critically think. How can we be better if we're gonna keep on believing everything we hear? When my video went viral, guys, it said at the top of it, and I didn't do that. My page was private. Someone actually took the video off my page and put it on their page. And they titled it, "Ex-Pastor Leaves the Church, Says He Can't Teach a Lie to Black People Anymore." I just did a video and put it on the thing. I didn't even put a title on it because everybody who was on my Facebook knew who I was. I only had a few people on there, right? When I tell you to this day, people still chase me down, calling me a black racist because they read a caption. I never said that. So I try to explain to them, if you ever saw a video of somebody on a train and it says, "woman on drugs," when you see her all contorted and acting some kind of way, it's a woman on drugs. However, when you see that same video and someone captioned it, "a woman is possessed by the devil," look at the comments. They believe it. They don't challenge it. They don't say, "Man, you sure she wasn't high on like heroin or crack or something like that?" The caption says it's that it's possession, so it must be, right? And this is how we do, and we got to grow past that. This is what I tell all religious people. You have to use your mind and think. Just think, that's all.
Yes, they understand that my whole life is just a blink of an eye. The history of the earth is with each moment that goes by. But this moment that I'm with you, it feels like time has stood still. It feels somehow like it matters, and that it always will. Thank you so much.